was crashed into one of the World Trade Center buildings. 15 minutes later, another plane hit the other one. That building has now collapsed. Within an hour of those two attacks, the Pentagon was hit, now we're told, by a plane, an untold number of casualties there. President Bush has been on the air. He was in Florida at the time, saying apparently this was a terrorist attack. Everyone now believes that, carefully coordinated from the air, and the consequences of it in terms of human loss and the effect on this country are still to be determined.
We want to go now, Tom, to Kathleen Zichi, who's with NYU Downtown Hospital. They've been treating some of the injured. Kathleen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you tell me about the injuries you're seeing and the numbers of people you've been treating?
We've seen a steady stream of patients for approximately an hour and a half. Many appeared to be superficial injuries, but I can't tell you that I've seen the most serious ones because I believe they're going in through the ambulance bay. So we have a very high level of activity here. Our first priority is on the care of those patients. And we do not have an exact tally at this time because of the level of activity at the hospital. We've also been responding to family members and friends who have come seeking information to the hospital.
And just quickly, Kathleen, how far is the hospital from the World Trade Center?
The hospital is perhaps a 5-minute walk from the World Trade Center, and we were the first responder when the Trade Center was attacked in '93, so unfortunately we have some prior experience.
Yeah. What kind of medical support is there downtown? How many hospitals in the immediate area there that could help with the injured?
We are the only hospital south of 13th Street in New York City, so we serve a very large proportion of the city. For that reason, our emergency room is a very high priority of this hospital, and the staff have been doing a heroic job in terms of responding to the patients.
Kathleen, what about the triage unit that is on the ground there? Are they NYU, a team of NYU medical people on the scene as well?
Yes, there are. I cannot respond to that question because I am not on the scene, and I don't have that information.
But you do have medical people, your personnel there at the scene?
That is my understanding, yes.
Well, Katie, what we're worried about now is that the other building may come down. They've obviously evacuated that whole area as a result of the crash of one World Trade Center. Now I'm told that there's concern about the second one collapsing as well. Plainly, there's been an enormous amount of structural damage in the upper floors of all of that. And it is more than 100 stories high. It wouldn't take much to bring it down.
Kathleen, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're told now that spokesman for Yasser Arafat, the leader of the Palestinian, the leader of the PLA, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, that he has, that Arafat has condemned what has happened here in New York. He says that the PLO has no role in it whatsoever. They're completely shocked and appalled by what is happening. There was just one earlier report that the Radical Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine claimed responsibility, but that was later denied as well. We don't know yet who is in fact responsible for this, but it was very carefully planned and coordinated, and fair to say it has been a devastatingly efficient and effective attack on the heart of this country.
And Pat Dawson is on the ground near the World Trade Center. Pat, are you there? Pat Dawson, can you hear me? Okay, he's having some audio problems. We'll get to Pat in just a moment.
Just amazing. You have to stop and think about, you know, the hijacked plane and the terror of the passengers on board. As it could have been up to an hour that they realized something was dramatically wrong with this flight, and then thinking that perhaps they were going to John F. Kennedy Airport here in Queens, actually, and the plane suddenly veering into the World Trade Center tower.
No, you can only imagine.
What is striking to me is that we didn't have any early report of the the hijacking. You know, a lot of people monitor that air traffic talk that goes on, and it wasn't until this happened.
Well, the plane left Boston at 8 o'clock this
45
morning.
minutes later,
so it was about 42 minutes later that this occurred.
And it flew right over lower Manhattan. A number of people saw it at a very low altitude and then take this sharp right turn and wondered, according to eyewitnesses, what in the world was going on. Moments later, of course, the World Trade Center was hit. It was about an hour after that Jim Miklashevsky told you, Katie, that he felt an explosion at the Pentagon, and now we learn that there has been a plane that's been flown into the Pentagon. There have been people who have been hurt there, and we hope no one has been killed, but it seems likely that there were probably casualties of a serious magnitude there as well. The White House has been evacuated. The State Department is being evacuated.
Here's the Pentagon.
Here's the Pentagon now.
Pat Dawson, apparently, let's just take a quick look at the Pentagon, and as you can see, smoke continues to billow out of that structure. As Tom just mentioned, it's unclear how many people were hurt and if, in fact, it was a plane. There is speculation that they believe it was a plane. Let's go to Pat Dawson, who is down by the World Trade Center. Pat, can you hear me?
Right down here, we cannot tell you much more in terms of specific information other than to say that there are probably at this stage, I would say, hundreds, perhaps in the thousands of emergency workers who in the last hour and a half have managed to work their way down here to lower Manhattan and basically try to get into this fray. We are standing right here about 10 to 12 blocks north of the World Trade Center. These firemen that you can see, firefighters are walking down towards the site now, and they literally have been arriving by the dozens over the past hour or so. As we say, probably in excess of 1,000 or more emergency workers from New York City and surrounding areas converging on this site now to try to make some sense of it. As you can imagine, at this point, there is a certain level of chaos because they're just trying to sort out who's alive, who's not. We did speak to, as I said before, some of the emergency workers. They are police officers from the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. That is the organization that has jurisdiction over those two buildings specifically, as well as bridges and tunnels. I spoke to two of them who were actually down there when that building collapsed. They said that they speculate that the loss of life had to be horrific, that there were not that many people down there on the streets at that point, that most of them who had been evacuated, that is civilians. But on the other hand, they said that there were literally hundreds of emergency workers who were down at that end. They have no idea the level of loss of life at this point. When I asked one of them why he was going back in as he suited up since he could barely breathe, he said, "It's my job, and there may be some of my brother officers in there. There may be other people in there." So those officers going in here, as you can see, all kinds of fire workers going in there, literally in the thousands now converging on this site. We cannot give you much of an organizational sense beyond telling you probably what you already know, which is that two separate aircraft have struck the two towers of the World Trade Center. If memory serves, I think each of those towers stands 110 stories. Some of the dust, as you can probably see now, is blowing in our faces. It just really depends on which way the wind blows as to whether or not we're enveloped in some of the dust and the smoke. As you can see from these pictures, the amount of dust from the fire that's still burning, flames and ash, is extraordinary at this point. And at least a few emergency workers have said that they really aren't so sure that other tower won't stay up now. They really didn't think the first one was capable of coming down, but it did. And so they're basically saying, keep back as far as you can. On the other hand, facing that danger, as we have been telling you, many, many hundreds of these workers are heading over those lines down towards that burning building to try to rescue those people who are in there, be they emergency workers, be they civilians. The original crash took place just about 8:45 by my reckoning. I don't know the exact time, but about 8:45. And when that took place, obviously at that hour the building would not be packed with people, but it's still late enough in the morning that there would be enough people.
We were listening to Pat Dawson, who's standing near the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. And Katie and Tom, I was thinking while Pat was talking, you both spent some time out at Oklahoma City at the Murrah Federal Building after that explosion. It took more than a week to sift through that rubble of a building that was how many stories? Probably...
It was about 30 stories, as I remember.
I'm sorry to interrupt you both, but apparently we've gotten a report that now a car bomb has exploded outside the State Department. Again, that's an initial report that I'm hearing from our producers in the control room. Can we go to anyone for more information on that? Apparently, no more information on that.
Where is Andrea Mitchell? Is she at the State Department?
Well, the State Department has been evacuated, as well as the White House. The U.S. Capitol has been evacuated. Obviously, the Pentagon has as well. We'll go to Mick. Mick, what is the latest from the Pentagon?
Katie, security officials here at the Pentagon have not only evacuated the building, but they're clearing the entire area. Security forces have reported that they have received information of another plane hijacking, that it's about 20 to 25 miles out of Washington, D.C., headed in this general direction. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld a few moments ago was refusing to leave the building. We ran into the chief naval officer, the top naval officer, Admiral Vern Clark. They were loading him quickly into a car to take him to an alternative command site. Do you have me? They were taking Admiral Clark to an alternative command site. Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we do, Nick. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. There's no confirmation of this latest threat, but security officials here are taking it very seriously. We were standing with Secretary Rumsfeld's security detail, who, as soon as they got the report, went running into the building, and we were herded away. But they have set up an alternative command site somewhere in the area. The Pentagon has set up a crisis team to deal with this situation. But so far, the latest reports are that another plane of some kind may have been hijacked and headed in this direction. Katie?
Yeah, we also should tell you, Mick, this is Tom Brokaw, that the FAA now says that all international flights headed for the United States are being diverted to Canada. This at a time when, as Jim Miklashevsky is telling us, there's an unconfirmed report that there's been another hijacking. All takeoffs were stopped, but there were planes in the air, obviously, at the time of these first two attacks on the Twin Trade Towers and then on the Pentagon.
Andrea Mitchell is standing by with more information. She was at the State Department. Andrea?
The State Department, as you know, has been evacuated. Secretary of State Colin Powell is now en route home from Lima, Peru. He did not get to his destination of Bogota, Colombia today, so that trip canceled. He, as all other officials, heading back. State Department officials and the White House officials and the NSC have all been evacuated as well, although Condi Rice was earlier in the Situation Room, and CIA Director George Tenet has been holding meetings in his office in Langley, Virginia. And as we reported earlier, key FBI team members from their rescue efforts and anti-terror coordinating team were stranded in Monterey, California, where they were on a secret exercise, military exercise, against exactly this kind of event.
Andrea, let me interrupt for a second. Can you tell us any more about reports we're getting that a car bomb has exploded outside the State Department?
I do not have confirmation of that.
All right.
They did evacuate the State Department, but we do not have confirmation at this moment about a car bomb outside the State Department. You know,
Andrea, thanks. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're going to go back to Jim Miklashevsky at the Pentagon. Mick?
I've got my eyes peeled here, Katie. I don't see anything, but security forces in the area have just blared out over their loudspeakers to any pedestrians who are anywhere near the Pentagon to take cover immediately. There was, as I said earlier, an indication that another plane may have been hijacked and headed in this general direction. So far, all we see are security helicopters circling the Pentagon. Again, the skies are crystal clear blue, and I can't see the speck of an airplane, but security forces here are obviously alarmed enough not only to tell people to keep some distance from the building, but to take immediate cover.
Can you tell me a little bit more? Well, actually, let's look at these live pictures at the World Trade Center. The other tower of the World Trade Center has just collapsed. You are looking at live pictures of the second twin tower at the World Trade Center collapsing as a result of the crash of an airplane into its side. That, I believe, was the first tower that was struck this morning at 8:42 Eastern Time.
You're not there.
That is now...
No. You know,
fallen to the ground and collapsed.
The profile of Manhattan has been changed. There's been a declaration of war by terrorists on the United States. There's nothing short of that.
Pat Dawson, excuse me, Tom, is down at the scene. Pat?
Where's Wing? Where's Wing? Where's Wing?
Pat, can you hear us? Obviously, there is pandemonium downtown. Pat is not far from the World Trade Center, as you can hear from the sirens, and you can only imagine the confusion and the terror that is in that area after not one but both Trade Center towers have now collapsed.
More than 100 stories of steel, concrete, electrical. Here it is. That's a videotaped replay.